The portion of this video is sponsored by Carvana.
We just bought this cheap used motorcycle, but it needs some work to get it out on the road. So today we're going to go through some of the most important things you can do to any motorcycle to avoid catastrophic failure. We're going to cover each step, including some things that you might not realize are extremely important. I'm Jeremiah. This is a motorcycle. Welcome to Donut.
Thanks to Carvana for sponsoring this portion of this video. If you're watching Donut, you know just how insane the car market is right now.
$100,000.
What? 100 grand? Don't freak out. Just try shopping with Carvana. This isn't your typical used lot. Behind me is Carvana's futuristic vending machine for cars. No hassling salesmen, no long wait negotiations. Carvana is a 100% online car buying experience that allows you to lock in your budget sweet spot and browse through thousands of cars that you know you can afford. They even offer customizable financing options so that you can plan your down and monthly payments all within their app. And now they offer the option to add a cosigner, which could lower your down or monthly payments. And when you've chosen the Carvana of your dreams, you can get as soon as next day delivery, or you can pick it up yourself from one of their many car vending machines like this one. Plus, Carvana offers a 7-day money-back guarantee, giving you a full week to see if you actually like it. And if it's not the car for you, Carvana's customer advocates will pick up your car and give you your money back, or exchange it for another one. I promise, you can't find a 7-day money-back guarantee from any other vending machine. Ever try returning a soda after 7 days? You can't. I tried. It's a long story. Well, actually, it's not. They said no. But not Carvana. They say yes. With affordable pricing, customizable financing, and the all-new cosigner option, check out Carvana for your next car by clicking the link below. Thanks to Carvana for sponsoring that portion of this video.
Okay, first things first, whenever I buy a new-to-me motorcycle, I always change the oil. And there's a few reasons for that. One, you get to see the condition of the engine and see how well the previous owner maintained the bike. So I'm going to drain it, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to get an idea of the condition of the engine. Anytime you're working on a bike, especially if you're new, you should get yourself the owner's manual, shop manual, something that you can get specific things like types of oil, types of oil filter, part numbers like that, torque spec, all sorts of information that you're going to need when working on a bike. The oil, when it's new, it has an amber color. When it's dirty, it's black. When it's kind of used, it's a little in between. So unlike a car that has separate oils for the engine, the transmission, the differential, a motorcycle like this uses only one oil to do multiple functions. Now changing your oil in a motorcycle is super important. Even if the seller says, hey, I already changed it like a day ago, I don't care. I still like to change it for peace of mind. So let's change it out, get some fresh fluid in here. Okay, so while that is draining, I'm going to go ahead and pull the book off. And I got her. Oh, she farted when I twisted it. Did you hear that little twist part? Dude, look at that oil. That oil is great. But what I like to do is take my finger and look at it and see if there's any dirt in there. If you have a magnetic drain bolt, to see if there's any chunks of metal. So the oil changing process, just like a car, is really easy. You have a drain bolt and you have a oil filter. So pull the drain bolt out first, put the oil drain, and then pull the oil filter. Take that off. And then when you go to refill it up, take your drain bolt, put a new crush washer on it, and torque it to spec. And then also, if you can, pre-fill the filter with a little bit of oil. That way that when you do an engine startup, there's not a split second before oil gets distributed through the system. So I like to pre-fill this as much as I can. Obviously, if it's in a vertical position, you can fill it up to the top and screw it in. If it's on the side, it's a little bit harder, something's going to leak out, but put a little bit of oil in there. It's always good. What you definitely should do is take a little bit of oil and put it on the rim. Get nice. Okay, so we've got all our oil in. So what we have to do is first start the bike, get it up to operating temperature, turn it off, let it sit for a few minutes, and then come back and check the oil levels. Make sure we got no leaks and everything's good. Now the next juice you need to squeeze from this blue raspberry is one of the most important fluids, and that is brake fluid. Now you're supposed to change brake fluid every 1 to 2 years, but that rarely gets done. And funny enough, it's really important that you do that. Now hydraulic brakes work by using incompressible fluid. That fluid transfers force from a master cylinder at the lever to a piston in the caliper, pushing that piston into a set of brake pads that clamp down on the rotors. And brake fluid is usually made from glycol, which is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture from the air, moisture being water. And water has a much lower boiling point compared to brake fluid. So when your braking system gets hot, that water in the system turns into a vapor, which is compressible, which creates a mushy brake feel and can even cause you to lose your brakes completely. That's called vapor lock. So you go to squeeze on the lever, it goes completely all the way to the bar, you don't stop, and you crash. Really, really bad. You do not want that. So we're going to change this brake fluid on the front brakes and the rear brakes. That is dirty, dirty brake fluid. Now, this is a 2019 motorcycle. It's 2022. I can guarantee you that that brake fluid is 3 years old, so it's got to go. What we're going to be doing is putting new fluid and then bleeding the brakes. So all of this has got to come out. It's much faster to do it here at the master than it is down at the counter. Okay, great. Look at that. Just would you look at that? Would you look at that there? Now this system uses DOT4 brake fluid, so I went out and bought the best DOT4 brake fluid possible, which is RBF 660. When you go out and buy brake fluid, a couple things to know. First of all, DOT3, 4, and 5.1 can all be interchanged. Do not, under any circumstance, put DOT5 in a DOT3, 4, or 5.1 system. Don't do it. They're different chemicals, and it'll just mess up your whole freaking day. I'm going to bleed the remaining fluid, all that nasty stuff that's still in the line and in the caliper down below. So I got fresh fluid up top. So what I'm going to do is press on this brake lever, come down to the bleeder screw, crack that open, let the fluid flow out, tighten it, and then let off the lever. And I'm going to do that, making sure I still have fluid in the master cylinder, so it pumps new fluid in, pushes old fluid out. Looks nice and clean, nice and clear. Okay, now the fronts are complete. We're going to do the same process on the back to speed things up. I have a MightyVac system here, which is going to be using pressure to pull the fluid through so I don't have to pump it with my hand. So I'm going to connect this MightyVac pump to this rear bleeder screw. I'm going to crack it open with vacuum already pulled to the pump. I'm just going to let fluid suck on through, making sure I keep this reservoir full of new fluid. Especially with this stuff. Now coolant is another fluid that degrades over time. So the purpose of your cooling system is to remove heat from the engine, and coolant transfers that heat. The ethylene glycol in coolant breaks down over time into formic and glycolic acid. So those acids, they break down seals, the coolant hoses, and the channels themselves. That's not good. You basically have an acid running through your engine. So we got to change it. We're at this open. Okay, so while I let that drain, I'm going to go over to the reservoir side and just take that reservoir off and dump it as well. So instead of coolant, I'm going to be running distilled water with some version of this. This is Water Wetter. It's a brand name, but this is a coolant additive. And the reason I'm using water is because water has a higher specific heat capacity, meaning it takes more heat energy to raise its temperature. And then I add this into the equation because this will lubricate our cooling system as well as inhibit corrosion. So they tell you how much to put per gallon of this stuff. I'm going to pre-mix it and then fill it into our cooling system. And I'm going to show you one thing that you really need to do before you take off riding down the road. Don't just fill this up because this bike has a thermostat. So the purpose of the thermostat is, just like a car, the engine gets up to operating temperature, gets nice and hot. Once it gets past that heat level of the thermostat, that thermostat opens up and coolant goes through the radiator, down this hose, and into the engine itself, cooling the engine down. So the purpose of that is you want your engine to get up to temperature before your coolant has some time to pull heat away from it. So it just builds some heat and then allows you to cool it down. So what you have to do is run this bike until it gets up to temp, the fans kick on, and the thermostat opens up. So we want to make sure we can get this thermostat activated to get any air out of this side of the system. I'll be watching our coolant temperature here. As that gets about to the middle, that's that good operating temp. Okay, so we let the bike run for about 15 minutes. Thermostat cycled, the fan kicked on and off, and we're good to go. We have nice, fresh coolant in our system. Perfect. Now, the next fluid we need to address is something a little stinky. Gas, anyone? if you didn't know, today's gasoline is hogwash. It's pretty crappy, and that's because up to 10 to 15% of it is ethanol. And ethanol is made from corn. And corn is just bad for you. But in all seriousness, ethanol part of gasoline leaves it with a very low shelf life, only from 1 month to 3 months at best before it starts to oxidize and turn some of your lines and turn some of the inside of the tank to gunky varnish. It's just nasty stuff. So whenever I buy a bike, I just assume the gas has been sitting in it for months and it's bad. So I pump this gas out. So right here is fresh fuel straight from the pump. This is fuel from this tank. Now there's a few reasons why this looks different from this. One of them is ethanol-based fuels. They're hygroscopic, so they're wanting to accept water. They want to absorb water from the air. That's not good. Also, it oxidizes much faster than a fuel that doesn't have ethanol in it. And because of that, it's pretty much going bad. That going bad can be seen by the yellow tint of this gasoline. Now this gasoline, over time, is gonna look exactly like this if you don't burn it. But for this purposes, we're gonna drain this completely, and the way we do that is actually pretty simple. That's just sucking it through a tube. So basically, I'm gonna siphon this gasoline out into this whole tank, and we're gonna use it for our lawnmowers or something. I don't know. All right, we got all the fluid in our pipe. So let's change the air filter. Okay, here we go. Underneath this cover is our tiny little air filter. Look at that. Now, whenever I get a new bike, one of the first things I change is the air filter. One, it's really inexpensive and it's pretty easy to change. Also, this is another one of those items that just gives me a good indication of how well the bike was treated. So there we go, air filter change. Another item, check on the list, super important. So if I ever go to diagnose a problem, I got air, fuel, and spark. Air is always the easiest one. This is the source of our air. Let's change some spark plugs. Okay, so here is how we get to our 2 spark plugs. We had all the bodywork pulled off, 4 bolts to move the tank and push it back a little bit, and it exposes our spark plug caps and spark plugs underneath them. Now this is a parallel twin engine, so we only have 2 plugs. So really, once you pull these, boom, boom. Now this plug has a brownish, grayish tint to it, which means that my air-fuel ratio is good and the temperature of the plug itself is spot on. And that temperature is really, really important. So various spark plugs might look the same. They might even thread into your engine, but the temperature rating of that plug is crucial to making sure your engine is running right. And if you're buying a used bike, you don't know. Someone should have been like, oh, well, that one fits in there. That one's probably good. But you always want to check to make sure that this plug matches what's in your service manual or what's designed for the particular engine you're running. So this is the standard plug that came in the bike, and this is the one that should be in that model. Now what I've done is I've got the same plug, except this one is made with an iridium tip. Now iridium plugs are gonna cost you a little bit more money, but here's the thing, they last way longer, they take less voltage to produce a spark, and the spark they do create is a lot better. They have a better quality of flame. Okay, so here's the thing, I just dropped this plug. So now I got a gap, which actually leads me to another point that I want to talk about, and that's making sure the gap on your plug is correct. Did I want to have to do this? No. I wanted to just put a new plug in, but my little slippery fingers dropped it, and of course, of all the ways it could have fallen, it fell right on top. Now because this is a twin engine and I have my spark plug wires on the left and right, it's pretty easy to know which one goes where, but if you don't have a bike that's a twin cylinder, maybe it's got 4 cylinders, you want to make sure each wire goes to the appropriate spark. We've checked the air, we've checked the fuel, checked the spark. Great, everything's in great condition. Now let's go look at the thing that actually is in contact with the road. Tires. A good set of tires is one of the cheapest forms of insurance you can get on your motorcycle. And just like your car tires, it's the single point of contact with the road. So we gotta make sure we got a good set on our motorcycle. So you might be thinking one of the first things to look at when you get a tire is the tread. But actually, I like to look at when your tires were manufactured. And you do that really simply. On the side of a tire, there's gonna be 4 digits. We have one right here, it's 3818. So the first 2 digits, 38, that is the week of the year that these were made. And 18, that's the year. So Now, as a general rule of thumb, you want to replace your tires every 5 years, even if they're unused. So motorcycle tires are made of rubber, and that rubber degrades over time. Everything degrades over time, guys, even you. That's why you get old, and you don't look young anymore. Same thing with tires. So after I checked that code, I can do a little bit of math and realize, like, okay, I still got some time. I got about a year and some change left on these tires, so they're in good shape. And the next thing I look for is the tread. So just like you do with your car, take yourself a little Abe Lincoln penny and put them upside down in the tread. Now if you can see the top of Mr. Abe's freaking skull, time for you to get some new tires. Now if you don't want to use a penny, you can use a set of calipers and use the back end of them. Push them down in here, look at what that number is, and go to your manual and make sure that it's within spec. Also, this is a good time to check for tread wear patterns that might be irregular. So if one side of the tire wearing more than the other. And if that's the case, well, it could mean that something is out of adjustment. So our tires are in good shape, and you know what else is in good shape? This license plate. That should be for a car. We'll put it on a motorcycle. Because this is a motorcycle episode. But you can go get your very own. I'd rather be driving Donut license plate bracket at donutmedia.com. Please share this with your friends. The more that you guys like and share this video, the more motorcycle stuff we can make. Please, please, please. I want to keep making stuff. So I went through the same procedure on the front tire, and it's A-OK. Now the next thing I want to do is check our tire pressures. Tire pressures are super, super important. This is where some people get it wrong. A lot of people will look at the sidewall and set their tire pressure based on that, but really what you need to do is reference your service manual. So my manual says the front tire should be at 29 PSI and the rear tire should be at 36 PSI, and we set that pressure when the tire is cold. One thing that you should always do every time before you go out riding is check your tire pressure and make sure that they're right. So just like your tires, brake pads have wear indicators notched into them, and that's what these little grooves are. See those grooves? See how they're elevated just slightly above the metal part of the pad? Well, when those get flush, then you know it's time to change your brake pads. And it's really important that you check for these because unlike car brake pads, which have little metal pieces manufactured into the pad to squeal, so they tell you, hey, it's time to change your pads. Motorcycle pads, they don't have that. So it's really important that you check these to make sure that they're within spec. Now for the most part, you can inspect your brake pads without having to take them off. But say they look pretty small and worn down, I'm going to show you how to pull them off. It's really simple. You're going to have two main bolts that you need to remove. The pads slide out, then you can check them, replace them, put them back in, do whatever you want. Now your brake pads might not come out exactly like that. This R3 is a little bit different compared to say a dirt bike, but usually it's two bolts, slide out, and slide it back in. Also, one thing to note is that these pads slide along this pin right here. So you have to make sure that this pin is nice and smooth. So I'm going to give it a little bit of grease right here, which brings me to the next thing we need to check, and that is all the lube and grease on this motorcycle. Welcome to Jerry's Lube Corner. What I'm going to do, is put a very thin layer right on this. Because the pad slides on this, you don't want it to stick at all. Great, all right, so we've done a little bit of lubing. We got that brake pin lubed up. Now it's time to lube some other things like the axles. We're gonna take our shock off and look at the condition of those bearings, make sure those are good. And we're gonna lube our throttle and clutch cables to make sure that we're nice and juiced up. All right, one of the first things I like to lube up when I get a new motorcycle, or a new motorcycle to me, is the clutch and the throttle cables. So those are really, really important to make sure that they're well lubricated. You don't want one of those sticking, and you can kind of get a pretty good feel if there is anything wrong with it by just pulling the levers and twisting the throttle. So this is the one thing that you're going to need some sort of specialty tool, and it's relatively cheap. This is just a little cable luber. This tool is really simple. Wrap the cable around, put the butt in over there, push this all the way down, and now what I can do is actuate that cable. And one of the things you're going to be changing most on your motorcycle are your tires. So you want to make sure you can get those on and off relatively easy. To prevent any stubborn axle bolts, what you want to make sure you do is grease those suckers up. So there have been times where I've had some bikes where I've neglected greasing my axles, and they get jammed in there. They get seized to the wheel bearing, and it's just a real headache to get them out. So we don't want that. I just have one axle bolt, one nut on one side, push that through, pull the wheel out, and then I'm good to go. Let's go do the back. Now the next thing we need to do is clean this dirty old chain, lube it up, and then adjust it, make sure that we got the right tension on it. Because having a too sloppy a chain is not good, and having too tight a chain is not good. If it's too sloppy, it'll wear prematurely, the teeth in your sprocket, the chain itself can get worn down, and you don't want that. So first we're gonna do is clean it, then we're gonna lube it, and then we're gonna check it. Okay, so depending on how dirty your chain is, you might want to invest in something like a brush. This is a specific brush. What you want to do is take some sort of cleaner. This is just some off-road cleaner for off-road motorcycles, but it'll do the same job here. And I've taken an old paper plate, kind of stuck it up down this side because I'm going to be spraying on the chain right here. I don't want to get any of this chain lube on any other parts of the bike. What I do is just take the wheel, rotate it, just do a nice light little film on the chain. Not too much, not too little. You just want it to get down on the rollers. That's good enough. Now what I like to do is put it on about 15 to 20 minutes before I ride. Otherwise, if you just go ripping around, this stuff will just flame off and get everywhere, but if you give it some time, it'll sit. Okay, so the way you check your chain is going to be dependent on your motorcycle, but for this particular model, what it does is you need a ruler and you need to find the slack on it pulled down a little bit and pushed up all the way, and that range, the difference between those two numbers, gives you that amount of slack. In the manual it says anywhere from 35 to 45 millimeters. Pull down, and I'm at 60 mil, and I push up all the way, and I'm about 25 mil. So 60 minus 25, that's 35 millimeters. So that means I'm right in spec, so that's great. Let's say I was out of spec. Say I needed to tighten my chain a little bit. Well, do it, show you, really quick, really easy, and really important. Now, on your swing arm, you're gonna have some axle adjuster nuts. This is two right here on this left side. This is the locking nut, and this is the actual nut that's going to push the axle forward and back. So what I need to do, take my little caps off. While holding this one, break this one off like this. Boom. So that's our locking nut. So we're gonna back that out. We go and do that on the same side. So the other side, so what happens is when I start to tighten this nut, it's going to push this axle backwards. Now it's really important that I get the left side the same as the right side. So there's little indicator marks right here, little lines that line up, and as many lines as you can see through that hole is the number of lines that should be on both sides of the swing arm. So if you need to tighten the chain, you're going to tighten this nut. If you need to loosen this chain, you need to loosen that nut. So now you got a clean chain, you got a lube chain, you got an adjusted chain. I think you're about as good as you could possibly be. Your bike is now in tip-top shape and ready to hit the road. So now we'll have a good indicator of X miles down the road, X hours down the road that we need to change all those things out again. So it's really important now that we're starting from a fresh baseline is to record your miles, record how many hours are on the engine if that's something your bike does. And write it down in a book, write it in a notepad. I like to put all my stuff in an Excel sheet so I kind of know. But by golly, our little blue raspberry is in tip-top shape and ready to hit the road. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and everything else at Donut. If you want to see more motorcycle content or just more of us actually wrenching and touching on things, I want to do more of that. Selfishly, I want to do more car stuff. I want to do more motorcycle stuff, actual fun things like this. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe, hit that like button. Thank you guys so much for watching. Till next week. Bye for now.